So good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm such a big fan of David and Ocean Champions and all the work that they do. And I do want to thank Ocean Champions. And I brought my wine up so that we could raise a toast to that organization, to the aquarium, and to Evelina. Evelina, where are you for putting on this terrific event right here? Evelina, a good friend of mine, also incredible. So I'd like to raise a toast to the Oceans and Ocean Champions and all the terrific work that they do. Thank you for organizing this event and having us here. I'm half French, so any excuse to have a drink of wine. Now, I also actually just found out, and I got a chance to take some photographs over there. Students from Santa Monica High School are here tonight. And, right? Vikings? Is Vikings? Go Vikings! They're the reason that I'm here. And the reason that I do the work that I do. I grew up hearing the stories from my grandfather and being inspired by his work, and it is all about the next generation. So I'm really excited to have them be able to join us tonight. And before I get started, I want to take a moment to set the tone. That's my job as the first speaker. There will be three of us, as you heard, but it's very important to us. In discussions preparing for this evening, we really wanted to. Being that we're close to Hollywood, we want to channel the spirit of George Burns, who said the key to a good speech is to have a good beginning, a good ending, and both of them as close together as possible. So I am going to do my best to do that, as we all are. And, I also, as the opening speaker, I want to take a second just to address the elephant in the room so we can move on. Because I know that there's a great deal of angst. A lot of people have come and talked to me about it tonight, about the current political situation as it relates to oceans and conservation. And I want to make sure that we understand we are not going to spend time discussing that tonight. Really, tonight is about exploring the hope and opportunity that exists going forward, and that is our theme. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there is an extraordinary amount of hope and opportunity as it relates to the oceans. And I have no doubt that we will achieve great things in the coming years, no matter who is in office. And you might ask me, where does this optimism come from? Well, to give you a sense, I want to tell you a story. As a storyteller, I thought I'd start with that. Because when most people think of Cousteau, they think of a tall, lanky Frenchman with a red hat and a Speedo who talk like this. They think of a man who invented scuba diving and submersibles and pioneered ocean conservation, a filmmaker, a poet, a writer. That's what most people think of. But me, I think of a problem solver, of a tinkerer, of a man who found joy and inspiration in the ocean. You see, before his adventures into the sea, a lot of people don't realize my grandfather actually wanted to be a pilot in the French naval aviation program. Unfortunately, he broke his back in a car accident, driving on the windy roads of southern France, and was immediately washed out of the naval aviation program. And his dreams were dashed, and it was certainly a tragedy, and he was told to swim in the Mediterranean every day to rebuild his strength. And a captain of his, a man named Philippe Cousteau, gave him a pair of goggles, and he opened his eyes for the first time looking under and was so amazed by what he saw. He became an avid freediver, snorkeler, but was frustrated by the limited amount of time that he could spend underwater. And so he met an engineer, and they miniaturized a valve and created scuba diving to solve that problem. And he didn't start out trying to save the oceans. He simply wanted to spend more time underwater. And so after tinkering and working, he also realized that he wanted to share stories about what he saw with the world. And so he worked and created underwater cameras and worked with people to create strobes and submersibles, and the list goes on and on and on. He simply sought to solve one problem and then move on to the next. And in so doing, he changed the world. My grandfather taught me that true innovation, true achievement, is born of adversity. And while there's a significant amount of adversity and challenges in this world, tonight, as I said earlier, it's about solutions. And as I said, solutions do exist. Now, Angela referenced a film that we did with Discovery Channel this past summer for Shark Week called Nuclear Sharks. And that was an expedition out to the Marshall Islands, to Bikini Atoll. And some of you may remember that Bikini was where in the 1950s and 60s we conducted a great deal of our nuclear testing in the United States, including the largest bomb we ever detonated, Castle Bravo, at 15 megatons. It was 1,000 times stronger than the bomb that we dropped on Hiroshima. Particularly in Bikini, there were over 20 of these tests that killed everything above and beneath the surface of the water. And when we stopped the testing because of the radiation, Bikini became a de facto marine reserve. And we went back 70 years later and were astounded by the amount of life that we found there. We'd get in the water to be surrounded by 100 gray reef sharks at any one time. And what struck me about that experience was that it was such a powerful example of nature's incredible ability to renew itself. Even in the face of the worst fire and brimstone that humanity can engineer, literally, it renewed itself. But protecting sharks, protecting the oceans is not just about sharks and coral reefs. It's about people and people's desire for dignity and purpose that comes with the ability to earn a living and to feed your family. I had an experience in a place called Cabo Pulmo, which is about an hour and a half. I'm sure some of you have been there before. It's one of my favorite places to go diving. And it's about an hour and a half north of Cabo San Lucas on the Baja Peninsula. And it embodies just about everything that is possible when we talk about protecting the ocean. It is a 70 square kilometer marine reserve. And the genesis of that story, of that place, is really remarkable. Because not unlike dozens of communities that you find up and down the Baja Peninsula, 30 years ago, the patriarch of the community, Juan Castro, was fishing like everyone else. And unfortunately, the fishing that had sustained that community for generations was declining, and every day they had to venture further and further offshore, not guaranteed that they would even catch fish. And like any good father, Juan was worried about being able to feed his family, provide for his children, and their opportunity and their ability to provide for their children. Until one hot summer day, a bunch of gringos drove up from Cabo San Lucas and asked him to take them out in his fishing boat. But not to go fishing. They wanted to go scuba diving. Now, Juan had never seen anything like this, and after the divers surfaced, they gave him a pair of goggles, and he put those on, and they invited him in to look into the water, and he was so stunned by what he saw, so amazed, it took his breath away. And the beauty that he witnessed gave him an idea, and after several years of working with the local community, with NGOs, they established Cabo Pulmo National Marine Park, which is one of the most well-managed and effective marine reserves. It is a 70 square kilometers, I said, no-take marine reserve, no fishing allowed. And as evidenced by the research from Scripps, there's been up to 1,000% increase in life on that reef. And when you talk to Juan and his children and now his grandchildren, you hear a common refrain that they're proud of what they've achieved, not because of the recovery of the health of the reef, though that matters too, but they're most proud because, in the words of one of his sons, Mario, they have something they can pass on their children that will only increase in value. And that brings me to the central tenet of my time with you this evening. People seek dignity, purpose, and security for themselves and their families. And if they don't have that, all the talk of coral reefs and pictures of polar bears and blue whales and elephants in the world don't matter. Too often, we have catastrophized the issues around the ocean, around the environment and conservation. I was at a conference on Monday, speaking at a conference on Monday, and Governor Martin O'Malley was there as well. And he put it perfectly when he said, "Milk and honey makes a much better story." So instead, I believe we must take a page from my grandfather's playbook and reframe the oceans as a source of joy, adventure, as a source of solutions for global problems, and an opportunity to create dignity and hope for people and their families. And while it's easy to poke fun and lament at the gridlock in Washington, D.C., as Will Rogers summed up so well when he said, "I don't make jokes, I just watch the government and report the facts." This work is too important to assume that we can achieve lasting change without Congress. My father and grandfather raised me with this simple vision, folks, that every child born has the right to live on a planet where they can drink clean water, where they can breathe fresh air and walk on green grass under a blue sky. And if we are to achieve that vision and build the world that we all hope for, there are 535 men and women in Washington, D.C. whose help we need to make it happen. And that's what tonight is all about and what Ocean Champions is all about. And I invite you all to join in that incredible work. And I'm delighted to be here this evening. And I thank you for your commitment to our water planet. So cheers.